Hi stamping friends, Melissa Kerman here with Melissa's Crafting Treehouse. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and I sell all the products that I share with you on my videos. If you don't currently have a demonstrator, I'd love to be your creative coach and guide, and you can contact me through the link that's in the video description below. So today's project is a club project, and this will also be one of the free project kits that I send to customers who purchase through my website in November and December. And I'm using the Winterwood stamp set, and I actually am going to show you a few like bloopers or mistakes that I made doing this project as a way to teach. So for the very first step, I've just inked up my evergreen tree with Mossy Meadow ink and just stamping it right onto my shimmer white cardstock. And next I'm going to ink up my row of 5 trees with the crumb cake ink, and I'm going to stamp that off so that it's a really pale light image in the background, and just stamp it just to the right of the evergreen trees. Now, I cased this project from something I saw on Pinterest, and it seemed super simple to me, and yet I think I tried it maybe 4 or 5 times before I got the effect that I was looking for. So there were some things that I learned along the way, which is I wanted to pass that on to you guys. So anyway, there's my stamped off image. Next, I'm going to do a little bit of a watercolor wash towards the bottom to sort of create a bit of the feeling of the ground. And I'm using my smoky slate ink, and I've squished my ink pad together so that I have a little bit of ink in the top of the pad. You can see that right there. And I have an aqua painter with some water in it, and I'm going to have a paper towel handy. And that way I can kind of control how much ink and how much water is in there. Now the first step is just to wet the paper itself a bit. Now what I have already stamped already will bleed if I touch it, so I'm trying to avoid touching those images when I wet the paper there. If I do touch them, those images will bleed and I'll get a little bit of green showing, and I did actually do that in one example, and it actually turned out kind of pretty, so it's not all a bad thing. So you can see me working on my ground. I like some darks and lights, and I find that doing it real quick and not fussing with it a whole lot, which is what I'm doing now, um, actually works a little bit better. So next I'm going to ink up my little deer image from the Dashing Deer stamp set, and now I've stamped it off, and I'm going ahead and stamping it directly onto my focal piece. Now here's where I made my first boo-boo. The paper was still wet, and so when I stamped my deer, you can see it sort of bled and it just didn't look quite right. So I was a little bit disappointed, so I did the whole process again. This time I stamped both of those images, the evergreen tree and the set of 5 trees in the crumb cake, in full ink. So I didn't stamp off those trees. And of course I'm drying it with my heat tool so that my work surface or my focal piece will be completely dry when I stamp it with the deer. And I did a little bit on the back just to make sure the whole thing is dry. I really wanted to make sure it worked right this time. So now I'm going to go ahead and stamp my deer. And here's the mistake I made here. So I inked up my deer, and this time when I inked it up, just like I did with the first one, I actually stamped off my deer. Because I stamped off the deer, you can actually see the trunks of the fully inked crumb cake trees in the background. Well, you know, my deer isn't a ghost, and I didn't want to see the trunks through the deer. Not very realistic. So again, not too happy with that result. So now I'm starting with another version that I did. I've done all the steps at the beginning. I stamped off my crumb cake trees, and now I'm going to stamp off my dashing deer. And for this version, it looks perfectly fine. So as long as you stamp off the trees in the background and the deer, you're good to go. So now I've set up my stamparatus with the sentiment, and I did this to make it easy for my customers to get their sentiment piece in just the right spot, inking it up with my early espresso ink, and then I'm just going to place my focal piece there and go ahead and stamp the sentiment. So it would have also worked just fine if I had done full ink of the crumb cake trees and full ink of the deer. But here's an example of them both stamped off. And then in my final version, the one that I actually assembled, I did use a version that had the fully inked trees in the background. And this was one where I had stamped off the deer in the background, and I actually just overlaid and stamped another deer over the top of that. There's my boo-boo, my one where the paper was wet. You can see that. You'll probably notice that on a lot of my focal pieces, when I turn them over, there's something stamped on the back because I've undoubtedly tried several different things before I've settled on the actual one I'm going to use. So now you may notice when I turn this over that I didn't stamp the full inked deer exactly on top of the stamped off deer. That was not on purpose, but in fact, if you look at it, you'll notice that it sort of looks like there's a deer or two in behind. So in fact, it was sort of a happy accident that I did both the first and second inking on that deer, because in the end, it was my favorite final result. So now I've just attached dimensionals to the back, as you can see, attached my pieces, and I'm all set with my card. So I hope you've enjoyed the project today and learning through my mistakes, and I hope you'll come back and visit me soon. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you can always click on the bell, and you'll be notified whenever I publish a new video. So I hope you have a great day and happy crafting. Bye.